Hello, I am Adam Camilleri and welcome to episode 13 of Gaming Against the Grain. This is our Warhammer 40k podcast, which is trying very hard to make uncompetitive armies work. An overview of today's episode. We've got my two listener questions, two army lists for review, ATC 2018, what I'm planning to do when I get back from that trip, a complete and utter Primaris Marine comparison to the existing Space Marine range, and then some closing thoughts. Jumping straight in, because guys, this is going to be a doozy and there is a lot to talk about. So Dean Senbeck writes, and this is our first listener question, and if you don't know who Dean is, he's the guy who runs a blog for the Blood God, and he asks, comp in tournaments, how do you feel it impacts the meta, and what do you do if you're paired against that guy who brought a savage as fuck list to a comp event? Great question, and this guy is a real trailblazer in the Victorian scene. If you don't know him, check out his Facebook page and blog blog for the Blood God. I'm going to assume everyone listening here right now knows what comp is. If you don't, Google it or listen to previous podcasts, because I've got way too much to talk about to go over it again. So I'm just going to define what I think Dean means by that guy. That guy is a term used in a lot of 40k communities to describe someone who takes the game too far, someone who puts their enjoyment and winning the game above the enjoyment of others and pretty much just makes other people have a generally bad time. In this case, it's stated that that guy brought a silly strong list to an event that is not meant for that kind of stuff. I've stated in a previous podcast that everyone should make some efforts to inform themselves about the event that they are attending and what they expect from the armies there. Despite that, there is always one or two dudes who seem to want to have everything their way and either plow through their opponents in the hopes of winning best general, or are just there to take whatever they want regardless of what possibly the right or wrong thing could be. Or they're entirely unaware or disregarding of their opponent's play experience. If you come up against this guy, you just do your best. Many events will have mechanisms in place to rate your play experience, and either that's through a tick box sports score system, and you can rate if you want to play against that guy again, or if you enjoy playing against that army. Stuff like that exists to be used, guys. It might be that nothing major happens to that guy at that event, but if he comes back next year and the same thing happens, maybe things start to sink in and shifts start to happen. Otherwise, if you honestly had a horrible experience with a player, tell the TO. Most likely, if only one person does this, nothing happens. But if 3 or 4 opponents out of one event out of 5 games tell the TO the same thing, the TO should intervene and give that player some feedback. And then at the very least, next year the TO can either comp that guy harder or that list if they try and do the same thing again, or offer them a resub if that list is doesn't fit the ethos of what they want their event to represent. As for the second part of your question, how does comp impact the meta of an event? In short, it impacts in whatever freaking way the TO team wants it to. But further to that, there is a basic way of thinking about comp that doesn't do your head in that I'm going to explain to you. And if you think of comp like this, it might not be such a big hurdle to you. So we've got an existing game called 40k. And if you're playing an event that has comp in it, it's like the TOs have added a patch to that system. Like it's a computer game. They've patched 40k to make it into what they want it to represent. Think of stuff like Counter-Strike for Half-Life, or what Dota was for Warcraft 3, if you grew up playing that like I did. So that was an existing game, and someone patched it to turn it into something else. But it's still based on exactly the same mechanics, exactly the same physics, exactly the same gameplay. Comping 40k is the TO patching the game to make it what they want to represent. So you're no longer playing 40k, you're playing comp XYZ supported by 40k. This mindset will allow you to let go of preconceived notions of comp either being right or wrong. So in the majority of cases, comp is implemented to mould the armies attending into giving whatever play experience the TO believes that their player base desires. All that kind of games they want to be known for. A preferred enemy, the tournament I run, we want to just bring down the power level overall and make people play with a wider selection of units than just the best in every slot for each army. It is our opinion that games become closer, more finish, and players generally enjoy themselves more when this is the case. In addition, we think that players take themselves and the games less seriously when this happens. So I hope that helped, Dean. And by all means, use TOs as an avenue of feedback. Always give feedback to your TOs if you are unhappy, or if you're happy. Don't just give them bad feedback. Give them good feedback too. They fucking deserve it. So I hope that helped, Dean, and gave you some ideas to what to do with that guy. Okay, moving on to our second question. Yes, 2 questions this week. Is from Matt Antonello. And he asks, what can a Tau player do to deal with the Shining Spear bomb that is so common these days. With its shooting twice and charging, staying locked in combat, and then doing it again next turn, it seems very difficult to survive and kill in return, because Tau hasn't really got a combat option to counter assault with. Hey Matt, it's a bloody good question. And it's a big issue facing lots and lots of players at the moment, not just Tau, but especially Tau. And it's something that's been plaguing everybody for 6 months. So the thing with Shining Spears is they are going to fuck you. The trick here is either getting to only fuck what you can stand to lose, or create a fuck trade situation. Complex, guys. Going in depth for you. For Tau, many lists have a lot of squads of strikes, and then the rest is made up of characters and then some heavy hitters like hammerheads and riptides. So a lot of the time this will be like a double battalion, so it'll have about 6 units of strikes, with being Sacia Sept for better marker lights or Tau Sept for better overwatch, stuff like that. So most Eldar snowflakes will want to use their Shining Spears to fuck you on turn 1. And with that in mind, there are some concepts to give a go if you're ever in this situation. And them fucking you on turn 1 is totally fine on their part, and it's probably the best thing to do. But it brings a few complications in that you can leverage on their behalf. The first one being not having to worry about that much anti-infantry fire, apart from what the Shining Spears bring themselves. There may be some Wave Serpents or Flyers in range of killing your stuff, if you're castled up on the backboard edge, but neither of them will remove squads and squads of Strike Marines. So what you're going to do is leave them no available space to land near your important stuff. So taking up all the available space so that they cannot connect with the things that you want to keep safe. So that means using those strikes to take up a lot of board space. This will usually always mean castling up in a corner and using your infantry, like I just said, to take up space in front of you. And you can be at max coherency here with your 5-man squads, as the size of the Shining Spears bases is relatively large, and they can't land between you and still be able to maintain coherency whilst being 1 inch away from you. So they're forced to land in front of you after probably using Quicken or Soul Bursting, and then they have a hardest choice. If they've used Quicken to get there, they will need to kind of think about how they're going to use their Soul Burst. With their shooting, they will pretty easily be able to kill 1 to 2 units of strikes and then Soul Burst off that, like I just said. But that still leaves them being unable to land close enough to connect with the units they need to. So they probably use Soul Burst to shoot again and clear themselves a landing zone for the charge. Hopefully what you've done here is leave them with a suitably long charge from where they landed in the first place, that they have a decent chance of failing it. And if you've only lost, and by this point you've only lost units that you can afford to lose, so you don't give a shit. And now we come to what they are most likely to do if you've done this properly. They will charge everything that they are in range of charging and try and take some hostages by wrapping models. If they are looking at a 9 or a 10 inch charge to connect with your Riptides or your Hammerheads or whatever, they'll try and take some fallbacks, and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to charge this to C unit, this to C unit, this to C unit, try not to charge as many of the Tau ones as they can, and then they'll try and charge those as well. So even if they don't make the 10 or the 11 or the 9 or whatever they need, they're going to smash into some strikes, kill a few, and then bubble wrap a few more, so you can't shoot them, and preventing you from falling back. Now, they should cop some significant overwatch at this point, and if you're playing the Tau Sept, you might be able to take down some of those silly snowflakes. And now they have taken some hostages and probably killed 2 more units. So you've lost probably 4 units of strikes at this point, give or take, maybe 5. But you don't really give a shit. If you're going to be doing this trade, it's kind of par for the course. And like I said, this is a fuck trade. And this is where things start to get interesting. And this is time for Tau to get brave, guys. Time for you to get brave, because this is what you need to do. You need to charge those fuckers. You need to go in there and you need to charge those fucking Shining Spears with either your Riptides or your Hammerheads. Or if you've got a Devilfish, perfect. Because Shining Spears are only good on the charge. Hammerheads and Riptides are toughness 7, so they are wounded on 6s if you charge those dunce holes. If you charge the Shining Spears, they can't scratch your heavy hitters. So get stuck in, like you got a pair. And if you have Riptides, it's time to turn on that 3+ invulnerable save across the board. Let's say you got 3 Riptides, all 3 Nova Charge, all 3 3+ invulnerable saves. Charge them into those dudes. Now they have to fall back. And they get to shoot before they die, or they stay in combat and they do nothing. And then you fall back and you shoot them until they die. Because you've locked them up now. You've tagged them. So they tagged you and took hostages. You tag them straight back. Keep them in combat. Make them have the same choice that they gave you. Now, if they fall back, they can't charge. They can shoot twice with the Soul Burst, but they can't charge again. And they are so far away, so far away from their psychic support, which is probably on the other side of the board. So they're going to be sitting there, and they'll probably try and use their melter shots on your Riptides, which is why you turned on the 3++. and you'll bounce a majority of them. It's very unlikely that a unit that's taken a big Overwatch will have enough melter shots to kill one Riptide, even from a max unit. When you got a 3+ invulnerable save, use the freaking command point if you got it. Now you are denying the spears the option to charge you, and this is a huge deal because that takes away shitloads and shitloads of their viability, and in turn gives you the option to just smoke them. Another thing you can do if you're worried about things is not taking bonding knives on your units, just so they flee easier if you pin them in combat. So if they tag all those strikes and they kill half the unit, you don't have to worry about rolling that dice and, oh shit, I stuck because I got bonding knives, which can be really annoying. And finally, this is just the one play that I came up with, and it is one of your better ways that I can think of to getting a tolerable fuck trade with those toothpick-toting Weasel Elves. Hope that helped, Matt. So in summary, castle up, take up all the available space with your Strike Marines and your characters, and then when they come in and they take some hostages, you tag them straight back with something that can fly. Either it's a vehicle, Riptide, it doesn't matter. And then when they fall back, at least, at bare minimum, they can't do the same again. And then you've left them out in the open, dicks in the wind, finish them off. Alright, hope that helped, Matt. Up to list review. Hey Adam, loving the show. Last one on Knights was great. Been playing around on a list concept for a while and for a tournament, and while I want to be competitive, in the end I still like what I like. Does this list seem feasible? It's not fully fledged ITC event optimized. It is a mixed... Oh, sorry. He's not going to a fully ITC event. It is a mixed event with missions dependent on table. Anyway, here is the list. And unfortunately, I can't remember this man's name. His name's Matt. Fair enough. Here's the list. Detachment 1 is a battalion from Talan. He has a company commander with a Power Fist and Kurov's Aquila for getting command points back. He has a Primary Psyker with Mental Fortitude and Psychic Barrier. He then has troops choices. He has 3 infantry squads, each with a heavy bolter and a Vox. Then he has 2 Scout Sentinels, each with a heavy flamer and a Hunter Killer Missile. He then has a big bad Vulture gunship with 2 Punisher Cannons. So, well, 1 Twin Punisher Cannon, but it amounts to the same. And then he has a Custodes Patrol with, he's buying an extra relic here, and he has a Dawn Eagle Captain with the 3+ invulnerable save. A unit of 3 Custodes with spears, and some Praetors, so the bikers. I'm assuming he only has 3, because that's how the points worked out. Because he hasn't got how many points they are listed here, he's just got what he's taking. Then he has a super heavy detachment. He has Mechanicus Raven chapter trait, and household trait. And he has a Knight Atropos, and he's going to be taking the Sainted Ion for the 2+ armor save, and he's going to be a Warlord, and he's going to be a Knight Seneschal for +1 attack, and he's going to have 2 Armored Warglaves. So the idea is that the Atropos is the heavy hitter. He runs up, uses the stratagem to run and charge. The rest of the army is there to clear off chaff so the Knight can get into the right units, which is run with him. They are Ravens, so they can advance and shoot. I prefer Griffith, but this stratagem for the Mechanicus are just plain better, i.e. playing on the top profile and a 5++ against mortal wounds. Also, though, Tyrannus to come back on a 4+, but that's really only benefit, and 6++ doesn't seem that good. The Guard are there for holding objectives in backfield with the Foot Custodes, and the Vulture flies around like a nuisance, and the Custode bikes do what they do best, fly and smash things. I know this isn't optimal. The question is, do I dump all the special weapons on the Guard and the Scout Sentinels to bring the second Vulture? I don't really know. And Talan is there so I can move and shoot heavy weapons. Thanks, Matt. So this is a pretty fun list. I love that it's got a bit of everything and uses the Atropos with 2 Warglaves. That will look amazing on the table. And that big boy Atropos will be a hard nut to crack with a possible 3+ invulnerable save and a 2+ armor. And I would love to see those Knights in the Talan colours as well, and have them all sandy and weathered. I think that would look incredible. I really like the Atropos model. In fact, I like all the Cerastus Forge World Knights. I think they look great. I do agree on the choice of House Raven. It really helps the Atropos do what you want it to do, and the Warglaves don't suffer the -1 for advancing and shooting their Melter Lancers, and which is actually really fluffy when you think about it, because Talan is pretty much the same bonus. I'm not sure if I'm missing something, but the list came out at 1964 in my Battle Scribe, so I assume there might be a list, a unit or some tech missing there. And with those points, if I wanted to bring this up, if I'm not missing anything, I just add another Astropath with Night Shroud. So you can make your Vulture +1 save to a 2+, and -1 to hit, which stacks, making it -2. That brings you to 2k on the nose. Dropping the staff on the Astropath for a las pistol will save you another 6 points for you to chuck somewhere else if you want. Further savings can be gotten from dropping the Power Fist from the company commander for just a chainsword, and dropping the Hunter Killer missiles from the Sentinels and making them the heavy bolters into mortars in the infantry squads. My reasoning for this is the infantry will be your objective grabbers, so most likely in the backfield for at least 2 of those units. And the Power Fist will only really be a thing if all the custodes are dead. And really, if that's happened, the Power Fist isn't going to make much of a difference. Lastly, sorry to say, the Hunter Killer missiles on a unit that will be moving, like Scout Sentinels, and they have a base ballistic skill of 4+, is a pretty bad investment. So when they move, which they will have to get in range of those heavy flamers, they'll be hitting on 5s with the Hunter Killers, making them very, very unreliable. Then I've done some tweaking with those points, and this might get a little bit confusing. So I ended up dropping the Primaris Psyker for a second company commander, and I dropped one of the Voxcasters. Lastly, I bought the second Astropath, so now you have both Psychic Barrier and Night Shroud, still for buffing the Vulture. And with your last 2 points, I put Bolters on the company commanders, because why the fuck not? So now you have orders for each one of your infantry squads, and still retain the Psychic powers. Now, if you wanted to make this super optimized, you drop the Warglaives and take the Atropos in a super heavy auxiliary, and then drop the Sentinels. With the points left, you drop the Custodes from a patrol into an Outrider, with 1 Dornier Captain and 3 units of Praetor bikes. To answer your question directly about the second Vulture, it would be pretty scary and strong. My configuration would still work with the 2 company commanders and just a single Astropath, but you'd need to drop the Sentinels too, like you said. Hope that helped, Matt. I totally think you should give it a go with the second Vulture and just see what you like better. But yeah, in your configuration with the Warglaives pushing up so quickly with the Atropos, I don't see the Scout Sentinels doing that much for you in the long run regardless. If you had more of a sit-back army, then the Scout Sentinels are certainly fantastic for projecting across the board and taking up board space from Deep Strikers. But with you wanting to be so aggressive, I don't think they do what you want them to do. So dropping them for the second Vulture plus the special weapons would probably be a really good idea. And holy crap, would give you a lot to work with. Alright, on to our next list. Josh writes, "Hey mate, here's the list we were talking about." And this is a Slaanesh Demon list. And he's written, "The Mask is probably one of my favourite models in the lineup, excluding the Forge World Keeper of Secrets, which is gorgeous. I love her Locus of Beguilement, and the Eternal Dance is pretty legit too. So I surround her and the Herald with 2 big units of Demonettes and get them into my opponent's face ASAP. Maybe using the Fiends to hopefully disrupt my opponent's psychic powers. Seekers do what they do and play Johnny on the spot or support the Fiends. I love the idea of the Hellflayer and Chariots, but not sure if they are worth the points though. I love the idea of the Lashes of Torment firing into combat and whipping your enemy in the shooting phase before hitting them in combat as well. Seems so Slaanesh-y. The Soul Grinder brings what my army severely lacks, which is some heavy firepower or any firepower at all. I know this army probably won't do well in the shooting phase, but in the assault phase I hope I can make up for it, if I can last that long. Alright, he has a battalion. And it's all Slaanesh, guys. So he's got a battalion, he's got a Demon Prince with a Hellforged Sword, which will upgrade to the Soul Stealer Relic. Then he has a Warp Bolter, and the Phantasmagoria Psychic Power. He has 1 Herald of Slaanesh with Purveyne of Slaanesh for the Psychic Power there. Then he has the Mask. Then for troops, he has 2 units of 25 Demonettes with all the upgrades, 1 unit of 22 Demonettes with all the upgrades. For elites, he has 2 units of 2 Fiends each. In fast attack, he has a Hellflayer. 2 units of 2 Seekers, each one with full upgrades. So that's the instrument, the icon. And then for heavy support, he has 1 Exalted Seeker Chariot, 1 Seeker Chariot, and 1 Soul Grinder with Warp Claw. So it's got the Flame Bombardment and the whatever the other gun is. Hey, Mono Slaanesh Demons. Very fun. I'm very happy to get an army like this every now and then because they are cool and do not get anyone near the love they or respect they deserve. And it's such a much maligned army that I really look forward to working on this one. To be honest, this list is pretty all over the place, and something I have noticed about Mono God armies is they usually have one specific thing that brings them to the dance. Khorne is choppy, Nurgle is resilient, Tzeentch is magic-y, and Slaanesh is fast. And when I say fast, I mean fucking fast, guys. Possibly the fastest army in the game. Any Mono Slaanesh needs to leverage the shit out of this speed big time if it wants to stand up to even medium-tier tournament armies. This is a bit sad, as we all know Mono Tzeentch is decent, Khorne is okay if not powerful, but Mono Nurgle is just fine and holds up no problems. Slaanesh, however, is not. Now where things get dicey. I actually had a really good look at and did some serious research into this list. And I'm happy to report that they have heaps and heaps of tricks and some really cool mechanics that literally no one else has. But the first issue I see here is the use of only a single battalion. Demons can be quite thirsty on command points, especially if you intend to leave units in reserve and are paying to deep strike them in. So now we have seen that we have 3 HQs and 3 fast attacks in this list. That's easy enough to take one of those HQs out and put those 3 fast attacks into an Outrider. Piece of piss, we've got another command point. Next, we also have 3 heavy supports. So with some easy trimming, we can get enough points for another Herald and chuck those 3 heavy supports into a spearhead, by just dropping a few demonettes if we wanted to. And then you've got 2 more command points. So you've got a bit more leverage there already. So onto some interesting things about Slaanesh. The first one is that they have both the best and worst Greater Demon. The worst in majority of ways, that it only has 12 wounds and a 5+ invulnerable save, where all other Greater Demons have 16 or more wounds and either have 2 saves, easy access to armor saves, or better invulnerables. But the best thing about it is that it's cheap as tits to summon, and I'll get to that more a bit later. But onto some other strong points. Their psychic powers are pretty good, and it's actually well-rounded. Cacophonic Choir can cause some serious mortal wounds if stacked with some leadership debuffs. Symphony of Pain places a -1 to hit for units shooting and fighting, which stacks nicely in combat with many of the innate -1 to hits that a lot of units have, especially with the mask that you're talking about. Hysterical Frenzy is actually fucking amazing if used right. It gives a unit another fight phase, and they fight as if they were in the fight phase as the spell gets cast on them. So you cast it and then they fight. And can really easily tip the balance in your favor in a big melee, especially with your very much glass hammer units. Now, Delightful Agonies was the same as the one I wish Delightful Agonies was the same as the one in the Chaos Space Marines Codex, which gives you a 5+ feel no pain save after your ordinary saves. This one only gives a 6+, and I can't understand for the life of me why, but it's better than nothing. Purveying Slaanesh, which is the next one, is actually pretty great. You just roll a d6 for each model in a unit, and on a 6, it deals a mortal wound. With some of the massive Orc units out there, and some of the 40-man Cultist units out there, that can be pretty great. And lastly, Phantasmagoria gives a -1 leadership, which when you couple that with Cacophonic Choir, can help you deal some nice mortal wounds. Can help that one do more of what it wants to do. So here's an example. You have 3 casters. One casts Phantasmagoria on a unit of Cultists. The next one casts Purveying Slaanesh, and then maybe deal 7 mortal wounds to it. Then you cast Cacophonic Choir for 2d6 mortal wounds, minus whatever their leadership is, which is now 5. You spend a CP, and then you can reliably kill about 10 cultists in the psychic phase. And that's actually pretty rare outside T-Suns and Zinch Demons, and maybe Eldar. And so that's pretty cool. Like with 3 powers, you can take out about 10 cultists, deal about 10 mortal wounds. That's pretty hard. Next thing I'll touch on is the Loki, which allows you to advance and charge, making these guys into ludicrous speeds, and tells you what these guys should be playing into. So advancing and charging with a lot of these units that move between 12 and 14 to 16 inches, that's amazing. Like Dawn of War, you are 4 inches past the center line of the board. And then with an advance, that's without the advance, plus whatever you advance, and then you charge. So that's pretty cool. Now the last one I will touch on is pretty amazing, and I'll kind of stop selling Slaanesh so hard after this one, because this one's called the Forbidden Gem and is one of their relics. This thing is one of the only 2 ways in the game that I know of that can actively turn off the abilities of another unit and stop it taking any action in a phase. This relic is used during any of your opponent's phases, and you choose a character of your choice and roll 3d6. If you exceed their leadership, they can take no part whatsoever in that phase of the game, and all abilities on their datasheet cease to work. So you can totally use that to turn off Gilliman, denying an entire Ultramarines gun line Gilliman rerolls during a shooting phase. That's pretty fucking amazing, guys. That's really cool. And it's something so unique. But the one I was thinking of is one of those Monster Knight Warlords. So we've got these Imperial Knights, and they're buffed up to the tits with all their characters now, their warlords, warlord traits and all this stuff. Let's say you're about to get charged by a Valiant. It's about to stomp your face in, or a Gallant with like 6 base attacks, so he's going to tap dance for 24 times on your corpse. He's about to charge you. Nah, mate, don't think so. Bang, turn off the charge face. Can't charge. Here's another way. Let's say a bit more canny. and you're against a super character like Mortarion or something, and they're about to charge your greater demon or your max unit of Demonettes or Seekers, and usually that guy would go in, and as soon as he attacks, everything's dead. You turn that guy off in the combat phase. You just go like, okay, you can't attack in the combat phase. I roll 3d6. I'll use a CP if I have to get over your leadership 9 or whatever. And then they can't attack, and then you attack them first. So they can't attack after they charged you. You attack them with your activation. In your turn, you cast the attack again power. So you attack them again in the psychic phase, and then you select them first to attack again in your combat phase. So you've attacked that fucker 3 times before he's gotten to do anything. That's massive. That is a game swinger. From Mortarion going into whatever unit he likes and killing it, to that unit attacking him 3 times and maybe taking him out. That's fucking cool. Okay, but I'm done selling. Done selling, guys. Slaanesh is cool. You guys should love it. I'll move on. So, onto some changes with this list. I did semi-gut this. I will admit to that. I tried not to gut some lists, but I did gut this one a little bit. But I tried to keep many of the same units in it, just so it retained the flavour of the units that he likes. The first thing to go was the Soul Grinder. And my thinking is here, if you can't take 2 or more of a unit like this, then they just aren't that worth it, as your opponent will just take it out and leave you with a 230-odd point hole, and without any fire support. So if you could take 2 and you lose 1, you still retain some fire support. But if you have 1 and it just loses it, there's no point taking it. So you might as well invest those points elsewhere. Next on the chopping block was the Exalted Seeker Chariot. It's an interesting model, and it's not really that bad in the game for its points, but with a degrading profile and only toughness 5 with a 4+ armor, it will go down like a sack of shit. Quick smart. Lastly, I think there was too many points locked up in the Demonettes. Without any cheap OBSEC units, you will be needing things like these guys to hold objectives for you. And to do that with a 25-man unit of Demonettes is just wasted potential. So here's what I did with those points. Firstly, the change that I did was to put some wings on that Demon Prince. I kept him with the Soul Stealer stored because it is flavorful and cool. And then I changed the Demonettes to 2 10-mans and 1 30-man. This is to deep strike with the icon and have an 8-inch charge. It's not as potent as a Bloodletter Bomb, I'll agree, but will butcher heaps and heaps of stuff out there. We have kept the 2 units of 2 Fiends because their utility is just bonkers. If I didn't mention it before, these guys have 2 pretty amazing rules. The first one being that they have an aura of -1 to casting results, and the second being that you cannot fall back whilst within 1 inch of these dudes unless you can fly, which is fucking baller. Really, really good. So comboing these dudes with the Demonette Bomb, it could be really incredible. But onto the bigger changes. So we got rid of the regular Herald on foot, but kept the mask in because you said you loved the model. I then added in an Outrider detachment with the Herald on steed, and put the Hellflayer and the 2 units of Seekers in there, buffing both the Seeker units to 12-mans. For the last detachment, I thought we should double down on the speed, and I added in a Spearhead with a Herald in the Chariot, and 5 Seeker Chariots. Fluff-wise, we now have an Outrider detachment full of Seekers, being led by a Herald on steed, and a Spear Tip full of Chariots being led by a Herald in a Chariot. Further to that, we have lots and lots of threats. I'm honestly not sure how good the Chariots are on paper. They seem solid, and are pretty good at clogging up the board, which is something you really want to do. Everything is fast and can advance and charge if they stay within range of those Heralds that I put them with. And you have a good shot at first turn charging in most deployments, as the Seekers move 14 and advance with a +1, and then charge with a +1 and a reroll to that charge. Further to that, if the Fiends make it in, they can stop the units being hit by the Seekers from falling back, making hell for your opponent. If I was to optimize this list, I'd strongly consider taking 60 Seekers and 3 units of Fiends, just to give your opponent 1 turn to kill everything you've got before they get swamped. And one last thing I wanted to mention is a little play I discovered. I mentioned before about the Keeper of Secrets, and it has a power level of 12, making it quite easy to summon. Using a Herald on steed to move in advance into a close position and clogging up the board with things like Seekers and Chariots, you can then summon in 2 Keepers of Secrets. Turn 2, right into your opponent's face. The biggest issue with the Slaanesh Greater Demon is that it's too easy to remove, meaning summoning it is the easiest way and safest way of delivery. And placing 2 of them into charge range turn 2 is a great way of doing this and putting pressure on your opponent. This is done by utilizing the Demonic Pact stratagem that lets you summon twice, and if you're worried about not making the 12 and the 3 dice, which you should, you add in the Soul Sacrifice strat and roll 4 dice for your summoning. So you're summoning twice with 4 dice each time. I hope that helped, Josh. I had a heap of fun researching this list, and Slanesh Demons were a contender for the next army I was going to do instead of the Templars. And who knows, I might do them next instead. Alright, moving straight on. I did actually have a lot of fun doing that. I fucking really love Slanesh Demons. They're so flexible but fragile, if you know what I mean. Like, they can do a lot of what you need to do to win a game, but you just kind of cannot be around long enough to get it done. So I think that's fun. It kind of toes the line in a lot of ways. On to our next topic, guys. The ETC 2018. I'm sitting here right now recording this episode, and in about 6 hours, I'll be jumping on a plane to Croatia to play in the Australian team for the ETC. For those of you who don't know what that is, this is a team format event where every participating country sends their eight of their best players to face off against each other. It's an interesting and a really cool format where you're paired off by your team captain who tries his or her best to get the most favourable matchups possible. In many events such as these, there are two types of lists that you write, either attacker or a defender. Attacking lists are there to smash face and get as big a wins as possible, and defender lists are there to not give up many points and do their best not to lose. For this event, I am a defender, and I'm taking a pretty crazy and eclectic Imperial Soup list that is naturally nowhere near the gaming for the grain kind of ethos and concept of this podcast, but I know many of you out there will be interested, so I'll briefly outline what my army is hoping to accomplish. Firstly, I'm taking a Catachan Battalion, and then a Custode Supreme Command Detachment, and an Assassin's Vanguard. The concept of the whole list revolves around the interaction between the Vexillus Praetor's 5++ invulnerable save aura and the Guard infantry units that I have. So I'm taking a 30-man conscript unit and 4 infantry squads. By bubbling up around the 9-inch aura from the Praetor, I can get those infantry units to a 3+ invulnerable save. By stacking the +1 save from the go to ground, take cover stratagem, and the psychic barrier power. Whilst I chuck the conscripts into people's faces, I plan to use the blob up guard stratagem to combine all the infantry squads into the same thing and just reload, go again with another wave of 3+ invulnerable save dudes. Furthermore, I have the standard 3 Dawn Eagle douchebag shield captains do their thing, and 3 Colexus assassins to counter any psychic powerhouses that come my way. Backing all this up is a battery of 3 basilisks and 2 manticores to sit out of line of sight and just plink away at stuff. So, something to know about the ITC, and the idea behind this list is that the ETC rules dictate that the first army to be put up for pairings gets to choose at the table that they play on. So most likely I'm going to be the put up. So if we lose the kind of rock, paper, scissors, or whatever army we have to put up first, is going to be me. So I'm always going to cop a really bad matchup, because then the opposing team puts up 2 of their lists, and then me and the captain get to choose one of those lists. So of course they're going to give us 2 horrible decisions, but then I get to pick the table I'm on. So most likely in the majority of games, I'm hoping to pick a table with a lot of line of sight blocking terrain, and just hide all my shit, and hope that they don't wipe me, and just score whatever points I can during the game. So that's the concept of my list, is to not give up a lot. And most likely I'm probably going to lose shit every game. I might lose every game, but the hope is that I play the role for the team and take on something fucked and keep it from getting big wins. In the next podcast, I'm totally going to be regaling you all with tales of my exploits. And I hope to have some great news to bestow on you all, but it's not actually that likely. So Australia has a lot of struggles with the ETC. Firstly, it's in Europe, so it's a long way away for us. It costs us a lot of money to get there and stay there. And further to that, we have a really low population, and we're scattered about a lot. So our current team has 3 members from Victoria, 1 member from New South Wales, I think 2 members from Queensland, 1 from Western Australia, and 1 or 2 from the UK. So getting practice games in with those guys is next to impossible. It just doesn't happen. So we're not able to do what a lot of other countries can do. Because of that, we never do that well. But fuck that. We're going to win. We're going to take it home. We're going to be the victors, man. We're totally not, but it'll be fun. All right. When I get back, what am I going to play? So I'm back in Australia on the 24th of August. And I'm going to be having a little bit of holiday after the ATC because I got some family in Europe. But in early October, I have a major event called EastCon coming up. And I have a very nice history with this event. And this is the kind of event that I kind of broke into the scene playing at. 2 years ago at this event, I attended my first large-scale 40k tournament and managed to go undefeated, getting the Best New Player award. 12 months later, I returned to the same event, and I went undefeated, getting first place overall and being the only undefeated player. This year, I'll be playing pure Templars. And while it's very unlikely I'll maintain my perfect 10-0 record, I plan to give myself the best shot possible. This means heaps and heaps of painting in my future, with a whole new army concept that I've been teasing you guys with on the horizon, and heaps of new units in the list. While I don't want to give too much away, and I want to leave myself with content to talk about when I get back, I will let you guys know that I'm trying my hardest to bring back a staple of 40k past editions, and that being the concept of null deploying. That concept is when you give your opponents no viable options to shoot or charge in a turn. I'll let you guys muse on how I'm going to pull that off, and I'll probably tell you in the first one when I get back. But to drip feed a bit of info, I have seen over time and experienced that the best possible play for vanilla Space Marines is to leverage a strong fire base with rerolls coming out of your ass, and built-in redundancy with the relic banner and stuff. Now, to my mind, sitting on the backfield with a strong fire base is a strategy that can only get you so far, and has a hard cap ceiling on what it can accomplish. The whole concept of my list is to take that concept and make it mobile. So I'll just leave you with that and move on to my next topic, which is a big one and a doozy, and I'm going to fucking be talking so much in this episode, holy crap. Already up to 36 minutes, and there's probably going to be another 25 just on this one. And this is a Primaris Marine comparison. I've stewed long and hard over this segment and whether or not I should do it, but it's become all too relevant to the future of my army to ignore it anymore. Primaris Marines are here to stay, and they represent several units that bring unique functions to the Marine Army. At the start of this journey, I chose a really specific aesthetic to represent what I loved about the Black Templars fluff, that being how they would have looked during the Second Founding and the First Black Crusade. This meant Primaris Marines out of the box would not have fit into that aesthetic, but I've tinkered and come up with some ways of making them better fit and represent what I want and amalgamate into the collection. So onto the comparison. I'm going to go through just about every model in the Primaris range and compare them to the most appropriate to my mind or equivalent non-Primaris unit, with the exceptions of the characters. And this is due to all the characters pretty much being exactly the fucking same and can be summed up as a whole. All the Primaris characters are between 5 and 13 points more than their non-Primaris counterpart and come with 1 additional attack and wound. And that virtually is the only difference. On paper, that sounds incredible. 13 points for another attack and another wound. I'd pay 13 points just for the extra wound. But it's not. It's actually worse in just about every way, and this is due to the lack of customization available for our Primaris characters. They pretty much come with what they're equipped with, and that's it. The Primaris Captain, for example, can take one of 2 varieties of mastercrafted bolt rifle and a power sword. This is a model with 5 based attacks. Giving this guy lightning claws or a thunder hammer would turn him into a beast, but you can't. You get your choice of 2 decent shooting weapons and a power sword that is okay, but far, far worse from many, many other options, guys. Then there's the regular character's options to be on a bike, in Terminator armor, or have a jump pack, letting that character integrate well into your overall strategy. Primaris characters have none of these. The only available option really from a Primaris captain is to take a captain in Gravis armor, or not. So non-Primaris characters are better in every way that matters to overall list cohesion. Onto Intercessors, the troops choices. So this unit has a stat line very comparable to a standard Marine, with the usual 3s to hit and wound, 3s to hit stuff, and 4s for strength and toughness. But these dudes come with 2 attacks, not 1, and 2 wounds, not 1. Initially, they were costed at 20 points per model, whereas a standard Marine was costed at 13. Now, for those 7 points, having 1 more attack and 1 more wound is pretty good. And on top of that, their basic gun has 6 inches more range and comes with Rend 1. And that was 7 points, so that was actually fucking decent. Now, it's starting pretty alright when you compare it to Attack Marine. Like, amazing even. But in Chapter Approved, these guys got dropped by 2 points per model to 18. Only 5 points more than Attack Marine. And we all know Attack Marines are fucking trash. And unfortunately, much maligned. They just don't do enough. And even when you take into account the special and heavy weapons options, the Intercessors come out on top, point for point. But I actually believe comparing these guys to Attack Marines to be wrong. And I think the better comparison is against Sternguard with special issue bolters. Both models cost 18 points. Both have 2 attacks base. Both have 30-inch rapid-fire guns. And there are only 2 conceivable differences that are worth looking at between these 2 units, that being Sternguard with special issue and a basic Intercessor with their bolt rifle. And that being that the Sternguard come with 1 extra rend on their gun, but the Intercessors have 1 extra wound and obsec, which I think puts them over the top in a straight comparison in a vacuum. Now, Adam, if they're so damn good, why isn't everyone taking them in every list? And why isn't this everyone's troops choices in every Space Marine list? And that's because scouts exist. Scouts existing in the troop slot and them being so integral to area denial and being so cost effective makes all other troop choices irrelevant, unfortunately. But it's pretty interesting that I could compare a troops choice with an elite's choice, and the troops choices came out on top. Furthermore, when you compare Stone Guard and intercessors in relation to the rest of the army, the lack of delivery methods for the intercessors makes them subpar to the Stone Guard. If the Primaris units had access to a Rhino or drop pod equivalent transport, they would be vastly superior in my opinion. Without it, they are hamstrung in many ways, and units of intercessors are in no way potent enough to warrant an expensive repulsor. Alright, so in that one, in a vacuum, intercessors are better than TAC Marines, and intercessors are better than Stone Guard, but they are not better than those in relation to the rest of the army. Next on to the chopping block will be Reavers, and I found it hard to draw a straight comparison with any other unit in the Codex, but the closest I could find were Assault Marines and Vanguard Vets. And initially I compared these guys to Assault Marines and then was like, nah, Assault Marines are shit, let's do Vanguard Vets. With jump packs. Both units have 2 attacks base and come in at 18 points. For the 18 points, the Vanguard Vets get Deep Strike and a 12-inch movement, where the Reavers have to buy the Grab Shoot upgrade for 2 points per model, and they don't get the additional movement. So then they come out at 20 points with just Deep Strike, no 12-inch movement, versus 18 points for the Vanguard Vets with the same Deep Strike, but 12-inch movement. But for the same 2 points, instead of getting the Grav Shoots, they can take Grapnel Launchers, which is quite a unique piece of war gear. Firstly, it enables you to come and be placed in reserve, and come on any table edge 9 inches away from your opponent and 6 inches into that table edge. But further to that, it lets you ignore vertical distance, and this is something a bit special in the game, especially in the Age of 8th edition, where terrain is so prevalent and needed. But due to the Reaver's inability to take special weapons or combat weapons, worth mentioning, and their inflated points cost for what totals to be less than the total sum of the jump packs, I think the Vanguard veterans have the best of them. But in truth, it's actually a kind of an unfair comparison, but it was the closest I could do. Reavers are just not a dedicated combat unit, and fill the role of harassment and kind of nibbling at the edges far better. Whereas Vanguard veterans you can equip to go in and handle many different units, even if they're not that great of themselves. Alright, on to aggressors, and here things start to get more interesting. Initially, they were pointed at 43 points for an aggressor with Boltstorm Gauntlets and Fragstorm Grenade Launcher, which is the optimum loadout in my opinion, and the one I'll focus on. For those points, you got movement 5, standard Marine to hit, strength of 4, but a toughness of 5, and 2 wounds and 2 attacks. The chassis itself, so the platform, it comes with perks too. That being that they can advance and still fire as normal, but if they remain stationary, they fire all weapons twice. So the Boltstorm loadout has a 6-shot bolter weapon, so strength 4, no rand, whatever, with an additional D6 strength 4 shots from the Fragstorm, giving a 3-man unit a standard volley on the move of 18 plus 3d6 strength 4 shots, which is a pretty tidy sum. Now, in Chapter Approved, these guys dropped 30 to 37 points each with that loadout, meaning that a 3-man is only 111 points. Actually really reasonable, if not actually good, for the output when moving. Finding an applicable comparison wasn't easy, and I tossed up a few, the first being Stone Guard with Stormbolters, but I'd already used them before and didn't want to do double up. So I went with Scout Bikers. They have a comparable strength, toughness, wounds, and nearly a comparable cost at 23 points per model for a similar amount of shots. The Scout Bikes clearly move faster, with movement of 16, which is retardedly more than the aggressors. But the aggressors can advance and shoot, so they will if you need them to move, and they'll have an average advance and move of 8 inches, which is half of the Scout Bikes, which is fuck all by comparison. The aggressors come with a 3+ save over the Scout Bike's 4+, and have a greater range of fire, with all their shooting being consistent from 18 inches, rather than the Scout Bikes only being comparable shots at 12 inches. The Scout Bikes at 12 inches get 6 strength 4 shots, whereas the aggressors have 6 plus d6 each from 18 inches. Now it comes down to 2 things, weighing up the Scout Bike's extra movement versus the aggressors' extra firepower and save. In a vacuum, I'd have to go with the aggressors simply because on the move, they already have more firepower and greater range than the Scout Bikes, but in addition to that, they have more than double the firepower if they remain stationary, making them a nearly self-contained firebase. At 115 points worth of scout bikes, you get 30 strength 4 shots, and that's 5 scout bikers. For 111 points, you get 36 plus 66 from the aggressors, which when they stand still, which is at a minimum 12 more shots and an average of 23 more, which is a lot, guys. So the aggressors win this, but not by a huge margin, simply because of the vast flexibility that a movement 16 offers you. Next up, the big old roid gutted Redemptor. This overweight uncle has a movement of 8, weapon skill with skill 3+, strength and toughness 7, 13 wounds and 4 attacks. He has 2 main loadouts, the anti-tank and multi-wound macroplasma incinerator, which is D6 shots and is a strength +1 strength regular plasma incinerator from the Hellblasters. So it comes with Rend 4 and a range of a plasma cannon at 36 inches. This naturally gets overcharged for strength 9 and 2 damage. Or you can take the anti-infantry option, which I think is easily the better one, and the one we'll be focusing on. And this involves equipping it with a heavy onslaught Gatling cannon for 12 heavy bolter shots, and a baby onslaught Gatling cannon for another 6. And then it has either 2 storm bolters or 2 frag storm launchers for an extra bunch of strength 4 shots, and an Icarus rocket pod, which is optional, for D3 strength 7 -1 anti-air shots. For melee, it gets the regular Dready Fist, but this one has D6 damage instead of a flat 3. Now, again, I found it really hard to draw a straight comparison for this dude, but I'll be focusing on its anti-infantry loadout with both the Onslaught Gatlings and the 2 Frag Storms. This clocks you in at 200 points square for 18 heavy bolter shots plus 2d6 strength 4 shots. Now, the closest I could get to anti-infantry output on a Dread platform was in Forge World, and it was with a Mortis Dread with 2 twin heavy bolters. This clocks you in at 109 points and comes with 12 heavy bolter shots. It has 8 wounds rather than 13 and therefore does not degrade, but it lacks the close combat ability and has less overall shots by 50%, plus whatever strength 4 that the Frag Storms put out. But when you consider that 2 of these Mortis Dreads are only 18 points more expensive than the Redemptor and come with 3 more total wounds, 6 more heavy bolter shots, and do not degrade, you begin to see some issues with being a big uncool or Redemptor. For the cost and damage output, the Redemptor is not amazing, and you can find significantly more firepower elsewhere in greater quantities for cheaper. The addition of the degrading profile just makes this guy seem a bit underwhelming, but for his damage output he still does retain a dual role as being quite scary in combat for many multi-wound units. Overall, I guess the verdict on this dude is not great, but he can add heaps to the right list. He just lost out in this comparison, however. Alright, third to last unit, and the one that I'm finding very interesting, Inceptors. Upon release, the standard Inceptor clocked in at 60 points with its 2 assault bolters, which are 18-inch heavy bolters. Assault heavy bolters, matter of fact. And with this other loadout, which is the 2 plasma exterminators, it was a whopping 86 points. And these guys are D3 plasma guns, D3 shot plasma guns with 18 inches, and they're also assault. At this price, these guys were obscenely overcosted, and despite a very reasonable damage output, they just weren't worth it. Having looked at the Inceptor chassis and platform, you get a movement of 10, standard marine to hit, and strength of 4, but a toughness of 5, and 2 wounds like all other Primaris Marines. In addition, they also have 2 attacks and deep strike, and they have a mortal wound upon charge mechanic, but it's pretty meh, so I'll ignore it. Chapter Approved moved these guys from really expensive for a decent damage output to holy crap, that's really good for those points. The Assault Bolter loadout went from 60 points per model to 45 points per model, dropping a quarter of its total cost of 15 points. And the plasma ones went down from, 86 freaking points to 59, dropping 27 points per model, which is huge. So with the price of 135 points, you get 18 heavy bolter shots that are assault and can deep strike and on a movement 10 chassis. That's not shit, guys. Furthermore, the plasma loadout gets you 63 plasma shots for 177 points. Finding comparisons from these guys was hard, and I had to settle for Devastators, simply because there's no other infantry unit in the Marine book that has access to such firepower. So now I rate both of these loadouts, and for the first time I'm going to be doing both of them and comparing both of them. But the first one is the Assault Bolter. But the first one will be the Assault Bolter Inceptors. Devastator, which is what I'm going to compare this guy to with the heavy bolter, is 23 points. So 2 of these Devastators with heavy bolters had the same damage output as one Inceptor and cost 46 points. The Inceptor is 1 point cheaper. Both the devs and the Inceptors have 2 wounds. Sorry, both the 2 devs and the Inceptor have 2 wounds, 2 attacks, a strength 4, 3+ save, and 6 heavy bolter shots. The Inceptor, however, has deep strike, toughness 5, and movement 10 for 1 freaking point less. Hands down, no comparison. Inceptor wins. Easily. Okay, so I Devastated with... Alright, on to the next one. And this one's even worse, guys. So Plasma Cannon Devastators are trash, and we all know it, but it was the only other plasma unit that had D3 plasma shots in the codex, so I had to go with it. A Dev with a Plasma Cannon is a horrific 34 points, meaning that the same output as one Plasma Inceptor, you need 2 of them, which is 68 points. 9 points more expensive than the Plasma Inceptor. Who, yeah, gets all the perks I just mentioned. Better toughness, better movement, deep strike, for exactly the same damage output. Fucking sad, really, when you think about it. I tried really hard to find something comparable that would look better when you put next to the Inceptors, but there just isn't anything. They are very unique in what they do and what they offer. Having such heavy firepower that can deep strike and move quickly on a hardy chassis for an infantry model is rare, especially in the Marine Codex. I did try to compare them to Marine Veterans and Stern Guard with combi weapons and heavy weapons, but the added cost of the drop pod to make them comparable in the deep strike blew the overall points out so much that it wasn't even a thing anymore. Moving on, second to last, Hellblasters. Now this one is hard too. As we just saw, comparing anything with plasma to a Devastator with a plasma cannon is a sad, sad, sad time. So instead I compared them to what I just said, the Stern Guard or the Company Veterans. I'm going to focus more on the Company Veterans now. So Hellblasters come on a standard Primaris Marine body with the same 2 wounds, 2 attacks, and all the other same Marine stats. But they have 3 variants of a plasma gun available to them all. The first and best one is the standard Plasma Incinerator, and it's the only one I'll focus on. This weapon has several advantages over a regular plasma gun. It's got greater than standard range at 30 inches rather than 24 inches, and come with a rend of 4 rather than a rend of 3. So a Company Veteran is 16 points, and for that you get the Veteran stat line, which is pretty much the same as any old Marine, but they got 2 attacks. For 18 points, 2 points more than a Veteran per model, the Hellblaster has 1 more wound, making it already superior for 2 points. Then we compare the standard plasma gun to the Plasma Incinerator, and the standard plasma gun is 13 points, whereas the Incinerator is 15 points. And for those 2 points for the gun, you get 6 more inches in range and 1 more rend. So that's a very good 2 points. Just like the other 2 points was a very good 2 points. Putting those two together, you have a Company Veteran with a plasma gun clocking in at 29 points, and a Hellblaster clocking in at 33. For a measly 4 points, you get better range, better rend, and double the wounds. Everything else is the same. So yeah, double the wounds. And Hellblasters easily win this one. Easily, unfortunately. Lastly, last Primaris unit we're going to do, guys. The Repulsive, the Daka Brick, the Hover Shoe of Doom, the Big Mech's Wet Dream. Funnily enough, this unit isn't a heavy support slot. It's a dedicated transport. And I actually found it pretty easy to find units to compare this one with, and that being Land Raiders. Now there are 2 main configurations for the Repulsor, and that's the anti-tank and then an anti-infantry one, similar to the Redemptor. But onto the first one, and the first thing we're going to talk about is the chassis, what you get, the platform. This dude's standard stat line reads movement 10, weapon skill is skill 3, strength and toughness 8, 16 wounds, and so far it is exactly the same as a Land Raider. But then it gets a little bit different. It only has an armor save of a 3+, not a 2+. But instead of that, you get 2 special rules that the Land Raider doesn't have, and both of these are worth like fucking 20 points each if you could buy them. And the first one being a repulsor field, which gives you -2 to anyone trying to charge you, which is amazing. And the second one being that this thing has the fly keyword, which is amazing. Now, at Bane's points, without any weapons, this comes in at 210. And then you put it next to the base Land Raider without any weapons. It comes in at 239, which seems to me to be pretty incredible. So for 29 points less, you get -2 to charges and fly, meaning you cannot get tagged and tied up in combat and made into a fucking paperweight, which is a major issue for Land Raiders. I have run my Land Raider Crusader probably more times than a reasonable person should, and having that fucking thing tagged by a Nurgling, turn 1, is just enough to make you cry. You're just like, oh man, what did I do to deserve this? Alright. And then the next major major difference is the armor save. But it's actually kind of negligible in the majority of the times. You're being shot at, like, who's going to shoot your tank with -1 to rend weapons? It's pretty unlikely. And if they are, they're usually autocannons, they're winning on 5, so don't give a shit anyway. Most of the time, you'll be attacked with las cannons, plasma guns, things with rend 3 or better. And the difference between having a 5+ save or a 6+ save versus those kinds of weapons doesn't mean as much as you think. If they have enough shots to kill you through the 6+, then they probably exact same amount will kill you through the 5+. And if you're left on your lowest bracket anyway, you're fucked regardless, so it's almost irrelevant. But onto loadouts. We will now compare the regular Godhammer pattern Land Raider with the anti-tank loadout for the Repulsor. So the Godhammer Land Raider has 2 twin las cannons and a twin heavy bolter, and this costs you 356 big points. The anti-tank variant of the Repulsor, at its cheapest, comes with a twin las cannon, a las talon, 3 storm bolters, an Icarus stubber, auto launchers, and 2 crackstorm grenade launchers. This sets you back 320 points. Now that's 36 points difference. But the noticeable trade-off in that is that the las talon is far shorter range than a regular las cannon, only 24 inches, where the Godhammer has 4 48-inch las cannon shots. But the Repulsor comes with a better platform, as we just stated, and has many more shots to contribute other than just the anti-tank weapons. This thing has up to 15 strength 4 shots, 3 of which are at rend 1, and 2 strength 6 shots at rend 1 d3 damage, in addition to having the equivalent of smoke launchers as well. So I think the Repulsor edges this one out, simply because it's harder to nullify and contributes overall more to your army. Onto the anti-infantry loadout for the Repulsor, up against my baby, the Land Raider Crusader. Now the Crusader is pretty Dakar intensive, with 2 Hurricane Bolters and a twin assault cannon, with the option to equip a Storm Bolter or a Multi-Melter on top. So that's 24 strength 4 shots and 12 strength 6 -1 shots. Now the Dakar loadout for the Repulsor has more fucking guns than I can be fucked describing, but the numbers come out like this. 24 strength 5 -1 shots, 5d6 strength 4 shots, and the same 2 strength 6 -1 d3 damage shots. So the Repulsor has equal 24 shots to Crusader, but they're heavy bolter shots, not bolter shots, so they're better strength with a rend. Adding to that is the cost difference. The Crusader is only 1 point more expensive for worse rules. So it's 1 point more expensive than the Repulsor for less shots and worse rules. Fuck my life. Damn. So breaking this down further, the average on the 5d6 for the frag storms is around 16 to 17 shots. So adding that to the total overall, and you've pretty much equipped the Land Raider shot for shot output, which makes me a sad boy. Adding on to that is the fact that the Crusader only gets its maximum payload from its Dakar at 12 inches, whereas the Repulsor gets its best shots at 24 inches, and you start to see a lot of cracks show here. And yeah, the Repulsor wins every time. So there you have it, the full Primaris Marine range compared to what I could think of to be an even comparison. In the sum total though, despite being superior almost across the board, the Primaris range is still worse on the whole when compared to its regular cousins, and this is simply due to delivery methods. Without a drop pod or cheap transport option, many Primaris units just don't get to do what you need them to do, and the Repulsor is just too many fucking points to be relied upon to carry high quality units, because you can easily sink like a third of your points in a 2,000 point army into a Repulsor and a unit of Hellblasters or 5 aggressors or whatever. It's just not that good an investment putting all your eggs in one basket. But slotting these guys into all comers lists seems to be a no-brainer for me, and it is something I'm going to do going forwards. Alright, just onto some closing thoughts and my last kind of discussion topic, which I've kind of left unscripted. And this one is asking you guys, the listeners, why do you play this game? What do you want out of it? What do you want out of the experience? What do you want to enjoy? What do you love? What excites you? Is it the fluff? Is it the models? Is it playing the game? Like, what do you get out of it, and what does this hobby bring to your life? I think it's important for people to know what they enjoy and what they love, what they are passionate about, what they believe in. because that gives you direction, that gives you purpose, that gives you a fucking, a way to point and, mold your actions and beliefs by. So have a think about it. Have a think about what you want to accomplish in this game. Whether you just want to have enjoyment with your mates, talk some shit, sing some booze if that's what you do, or you want to go to the top level and just see what your brain can construct at tactical thinking, dissection, and all those kinds of things. For me, this hobby has kind of eclipsed just being something that keeps me busy. So at the start, in the first episode of this podcast, I told you guys that this hobby means a lot to me, that it's something that helped me in my journey of recovery, getting clean and staying clean. And it gave me something to do with my hands to keep my brain busy. So I didn't have to think about drugs, I didn't have to think about damage and trauma and all the things that I'd done. And it allowed me time to heal because it gave me something productive to do with myself and something to love, something to invest in. So what do you guys love about this? Chuck it in the comments in the YouTube thing. Fucking send me some emails. Tell me about you. Tell me what you love about this hobby. What gets you excited? Like, if you want, I'll read that shit out. And so, we can get a big fucking database of what people love about being a part of. I have a very much a love-hate relationship with the 40K community, even though on the whole, I think it's an amazing place. I dislike how much members of this community gossip, even though, I'm a fucking card-carrying gossiper at times myself. And, that gives me something to work on and a direction to take. And, it helps me be the person I want to be. Because 40K is very much a mirror. If you have a messy life, you'll play messy on the board. And your painting will be messy, your models will be messy, your army will be messy. If you, if you've got your shit together, you genuinely seem to do better in life. And that's everything. That's not just the hobby. It's just that the hobby is the best frame of reference I have for you guys. So yeah, send me some emails. Tell me what you guys love. Tell me what gets the paint on the brush, gets the models on the table, the dice in your hand. I want to know, guys. So send me some emails. You can find me at gamingagainstthegrain1@gmail.com. Send me some lists. Send me some questions. Give me some feedback. I fucking love to know. Thanks for listening, guys. It was a lot of content today, and it will be the last time you're hearing from me for about 3 weeks. The next episode will be post-ETC, post-holiday, and I'll be fucking pumped and tanned and probably 5 kilos fatter, and I can't wait. So thanks for listening, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Take care and good night.